New Coke quietly disappeared over the following years. It was rebranded, relaunched as Coke 2, and eventually discontinued for good in 2002. Today, it is remembered as a cautionary tale taught in business schools around the world. Coca-Cola survived, more than survived, but the cost was real. Billions in losses, in damage control, in rebranding. Careers ended. Trust was shaken. And the question that haunted boardrooms for years afterward was a simple one. How does a company with 200,000 data points get it so catastrophically wrong? Here's what the new Coke disaster really teaches us. Data without context is dangerous. Coca-Cola had the numbers. They had the research. They had the science. What they didn't have was an understanding of something that can't be measured in a blind taste test. Identity, belonging, nostalgia, the irrational, deeply human attachment we form to the things that have been part of our lives. No spreadsheet captures that. No survey box can hold it. The greatest brands in the world aren't just selling products. They're selling a feeling, a memory, a version of yourself. And when you mess with that, even with the best intentions, even with the best data, you're playing with fire. Coca-Cola learned that the hard way, in 77 days, in front of the entire world. The formula for success isn't always in the formula.
He admitted they had underestimated the emotional bond between the product and the public. It was one of the most remarkable reversals in corporate history. A billion-dollar company publicly admitting it had gotten something fundamentally, embarrassingly wrong. The coverage was enormous. ABC News broke into its regular programming to announce the return of Original Coke. The Senate took a break from actual government business to celebrate. It was as if a national crisis had been resolved. And then, something extraordinary happened. Something Coca-Cola did not plan for, did not expect, and could not have paid for. Sales went through the roof. The outrage had reminded every single person in America just how much they loved Coke. The absence had made the heart grow fonder on a national scale. Coca-Cola Classic outsold both New Coke and Pepsi by the end of the year. The company's market share climbed to its highest point in years. Some people, to this day, believe the whole thing was deliberate. A genius marketing stunt to reignite public passion. Coca-Cola's executives have always denied it. But whether it was a mistake or a masterpiece, the result was the same.
The announcement is massive. Press conferences, global headlines. Company executives stand in front of cameras, smiling, confident. This, they say, is the most important decision in the company's history. They had no idea how right they were, just not in the way they expected. The backlash was immediate, and it was savage. Within days, the phone lines at Coca-Cola's headquarters were flooded, not with praise, with fury. People weren't just disappointed, they were angry, personally offended. Some were in tears. "You have taken away my freedom of choice," one man wrote. "This is the same as death in the family." Hundreds of thousands of letters poured in. A psychiatrist was brought in to help staff cope with the volume of emotionally charged calls. People were hoarding Original Coke, driving to different states, buying out entire stores, stockpiling cases in their basements like it was the apocalypse. A man in Seattle formed a group called the Old Cola Drinkers of America. Protesters showed up outside Coca-Cola's offices. Senators got involved. It was on the news every single night. But here's the thing that makes this story so fascinating. The taste tests had worked. In a laboratory setting with no context, no memory, no emotion, yes, people preferred the sweeter taste. But Coca-Cola had made a classic mistake. They tested the product. They forgot to test what it meant. Coca-Cola wasn't just a drink. It was a memory.
It was Saturday afternoons and summer barbecues and your grandmother's kitchen. It was America. And when Coca-Cola took that away, people didn't just feel robbed of a beverage. They felt robbed of a piece of themselves. 77 days. That's how long New Coke lasted before Coca-Cola blinked. On July 11th, 1985, just over 2.5 months after the launch, Coca-Cola CEO Roberto Goizueta walked in front of a camera and announced that the original formula was coming back. He called it Classic Coke. He apologized.
What if the problem is the formula itself? How it started. Coca-Cola's research team gets to work. They run their own blind taste tests, nearly 200,000 of them across the United States and Canada. And the results are clear. When people taste a sweeter, smoother formula without knowing what it is, they prefer it to the original Coke. The numbers don't lie. The data is clean. The logic seems airtight. So in 1985, Coca-Cola makes its move. They quietly retire the original formula, the same recipe that has existed since 1886, and replace it with a new, sweeter version. They call it New Coke.
The $1 billion mistake that changed Coca-Cola forever. In 1985, the most powerful beverage company in the world looked at its 99-year-old product, the most recognized brand on the planet, and decided to kill it. Not because it was failing, not because it was losing money, but because they were scared. What happened next became one of the most studied disasters in the history of American business. A decision so catastrophic, so tone-deaf, so spectacularly wrong that it cost the company over $1 billion, triggered a national outrage, and ended with a humiliating public apology on live television. This is the story of New Coke, and the lesson inside it is something every company and every person needs to hear. Setup and background. To understand why Coca-Cola made this mistake, you have to understand the world they were living in. It's the early 1980s. Pepsi is on the rise. They're running a brilliant marketing campaign called the Pepsi Challenge, setting up blind taste tests in malls and supermarkets across America, where ordinary people are handed 2 cups with no labels. And in test after test, people are choosing the sweeter cup, the Pepsi cup. The footage is everywhere. Pepsi is playing it on television, and it's working. Pepsi's market share is climbing. For the first time in decades, Coca-Cola is genuinely rattled. Inside Coca-Cola's headquarters in Atlanta, the mood is tense. Executives are watching their lead shrink, and they start asking a dangerous question. What if the problem isn't our marketing?